Is implementing effective grievance mechanisms as easy as placing a complaint box on an employee lunchroom? Let's talk about the importance of implementing effective grievance mechanisms in organizations and the role that these mechanisms can play in enhancing accountability and sustainable development. Operational grievance mechanisms are usually non-judicial complaint processes that provide a means for individuals, workers, or communities who might be affected by a company's activities to raise questions and concerns with a company, and ideally get them addressed in a prompt and consistent manner. They don't replace judicial forms of remedy. However, when implemented effectively, grievance mechanisms do offer the prospect of an efficient, immediate, and low-cost form of problem-solving and remedy for both companies and complainants. In addition to providing remedy to stakeholders, an effective grievance mechanism that helps both address and remedy human rights concerns can also have significant benefits for businesses and their global supply chains. Benefits include the early identification of potential risks, where grievance mechanisms can serve as a sort of early warning mechanism regarding potential human rights risks, so that companies can identify emerging issues early on and develop effective mitigation strategies. They can also result in more timely resolution of disputes, providing a means where issues can be addressed before they escalate into more lengthy and complex disputes that often come at a high cost, not only for workers, but also for the suppliers in an organization's supply chain through labor stoppages, and ultimately for the buyers themselves through delayed orders or reputational damage should the dispute escalate into a public protest. Grievance mechanisms can also help ensure that companies are compliant with relevant regulations. The establishment and operation of an effective grievance mechanism is increasingly becoming codified in some national laws as part of a government's efforts to implement the UNGPs within their national action plans. Recent legislation in Europe, for example, has asserted the need for operational grievance mechanisms. Having an appropriate grievance mechanism would therefore help demonstrate that companies are meeting their due diligence obligations, both among their own workers and within their greater supply chains. And effective grievance mechanisms can also help to enhance audit effectiveness. Many companies expend enormous resources on various audits in their supply chains. Grievance mechanisms don't replace audits, but they can enhance them and augment their effectiveness, allowing auditors and those involved in undertaking due diligence assignments to focus on the right issues. The establishment of a grievance mechanism is a key part of a company's responsibility to respect under the UN Guiding Principles on Business and Human Rights Framework, which requires that companies take appropriate steps to respect human rights by adopting policies, carrying out due diligence, and taking steps to mitigate any potential negative human rights impacts. The UNGPs have also affirmed the need for companies to establish effective operational level grievance mechanisms for stakeholders who may be negatively impacted by their activities, including those in their supply chains, in order that grievances can be addressed early and remediated directly. In today's globalized supply chains, we often hear cases where workers continue to work under what are often less than optimal conditions. Even when there are rights violated, workers are sometimes afraid to speak out due to fear of retaliation, punishment, or even termination. It can be very difficult for them to access remedies. Grievance mechanisms are there to help workers improve their working situations and access their rights. So it's very important that these mechanisms function as they should. One way to ensure this is to make sure that the operational grievance mechanisms align with the UNGPs, specifically Guiding Principle 31, which lays out 8 effectiveness criteria to ensure that grievance mechanisms are legitimate, that they're accessible, predictable, that they're equitable, are transparent, rights compatible, are a source of continuous learning, and are based on engagement and dialogue. If you're interested in assessing the current effectiveness of your operational grievance mechanism, we would encourage you to use our free online assessment tool by visiting our website or clicking on the link at the end of this video. Most of the effectiveness criteria listed in the UNGPs, and that we've included here, are useful but inherently subjective. There's no one particular process or formula that will automatically ensure that your grievance mechanism is legitimate or accessible in general terms. Concepts of legitimacy and accessibility only make sense in relationship to a set of specific circumstances, geographies, or cultures, and can't be generalized, which is why you should always be a bit suspicious of a prescriptive approach in this area. Something that may be legitimate for, say, tech workers in Mumbai may not be legitimate for community members near a mine in Guatemala. At the end of the day, the true test of effectiveness can only be assessed by the intended users themselves, which is why we adopt a stakeholder-driven model of accountability in all our projects. When helping to implement grievance mechanisms, we don't want to just hang another complaint box in the lunchroom in order to tick a box. We want it to produce real results, generate real value, both for the intended users and ultimately the companies involved, so that it results in better outcomes for all. Thank you for watching this video. If you found it useful, please consider subscribing, giving us a like, or leaving us a comment below. I'll include a link to our grievance mechanism assessment tool in the comment box, and you can find it there. Thank you.